The lunchtime rush buzzed inside a small-town diner, silverware clinking, orders flying, and a young black woman quietly standing in line, clutching a few crumpled bills. When she reached the counter, the manager barely looked up. With a cold smirk, he tossed her change onto the counter, coins scattering across the floor like crumbs for a beggar. Laughter rippled from a few nearby tables as she knelt to pick them up. But what no one knew, not the staff, not the customers, not even the smug manager, was that the broke girl he just humiliated was the brand new owner of the entire restaurant, and she was about to change everything. Just 3 days earlier, that same young woman, Ava Coleman, had driven into town with a quiet smile and a signed folder resting in her passenger seat. After years of hard work, she had finally bought the Maple Leaf Diner, a once charming spot where her late grandmother used to work as a cook. Ava had big dreams for the place, to restore its warmth, bring back the community spirit, and prove that dignity and kindness still had a place in business. But Ava didn't walk in with fanfare or a suit. She wanted to see the restaurant as it truly was, through the eyes of an ordinary customer. So she decided to visit quietly, dressed simply, blending in. What she saw, however, broke her heart. The place that once smelled of biscuits and laughter now reeked of arrogance and indifference. The staff ignored elderly customers, rolled their eyes at workers in uniforms, and treated anyone who didn't look important like they didn't belong. Still, Ava stayed calm. She ordered a coffee, just to observe, but the manager, a man named Rick, made it clear that she wasn't welcome. His tone dripped with disdain, his smirk unshaken as he dropped her change like trash. The humiliation stung, not just because it was aimed at her, but because it revealed how far the diner had fallen. Ava quietly left that day, her mind already spinning. She could have revealed the truth right then. But she didn't. She had something far more powerful in mind. The next morning, the Maple Leaf Diner opened as usual. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air, and Rick strutted around like he owned the place, barking orders, scolding servers, and bragging to customers about how business was booming under his management. He had no idea that within a few hours, everything he believed about his power, his authority, and his privilege would come crashing down. While the staff bustled through breakfast service, a black SUV pulled up outside. Ava stepped out, this time not in jeans and sneakers, but in a sharp cream blazer, her curls neatly pinned. She looked confident, the kind of confidence that came from knowing the truth. She paused for a moment by the diner's old wooden sign, running her hand along the faded paint, whispering to herself, "Time to bring this place back to life." Inside, Rick noticed her immediately. His expression soured, as if just the sight of her returning annoyed him. He muttered something under his breath about people not knowing when they're not welcome, and went back to yelling at a waitress for forgetting a coffee refill. Ava walked in calmly, taking in every detail: the chipped counters, the stained menus, the nervous looks from underpaid staff who clearly feared Rick's temper. In the corner, a mother of two sat waiting for her order, ignored for nearly 15 minutes. An elderly man politely asked for his check only to be told, "You can wait." The diner had lost its soul. It was running on routine, not respect. Ava's heart ached, but she stayed composed. She sat down at her usual spot, the same counter stool from the day before, and ordered another coffee. This time, Rick refused to serve her. "We're busy," he snapped, waving her off. The waitress, clearly uncomfortable, mouthed a quiet, "Sorry." That was the moment Ava knew it was time. She stood up, reached into her bag, and pulled out a thick folder, embossed with gold lettering, "Purchase Agreement, the Maple Leaf Diner." She placed it gently on the counter. Rick glanced at it, confused before his smirk began to fade. "Maybe you should take a good look," Ava said softly. He flipped through the papers, his face draining of color as he saw the buyer's name, the signatures, and the date of sale. The restaurant had a new owner, and it wasn't him. The other employees gathered, whispering, glancing between Ava and their stunned manager. Rick stammered. This must be a mistake. But deep down he knew it wasn't. The humiliation he'd inflicted on her, the coins tossed, the condescending smirk, now came rushing back to him in a wave of shame. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm presence filled the room with a quiet authority more powerful than any outburst. You're right about one thing, Rick, she said, her tone even. This place is under new management. The diner fell silent. Even the clinking of dishes stopped. The woman he had once treated as invisible was now the one signing his paychecks, and she wasn't there for revenge. She was there to rebuild what he had destroyed. The silence inside the diner felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting for what would happen next. Rick's face turned red, then pale, then red again as the realization sank in. The staff watched, frozen, unsure whether to pity him or applaud her. Ava stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor, her eyes never leaving his. Rick, she said evenly, I came here yesterday to see how my customers were treated, how my grandmother's legacy had survived. She glanced around at the cracked booths, the dusty windows, the anxious faces of waitresses who looked too afraid to speak. What I saw broke my heart. Rick started mumbling excuses. Look, it was just a misunderstanding. We get all kinds in here, I didn't mean. Ava held up a hand. You didn't mean to throw my change at me. You didn't mean to humiliate someone because of the color of their skin. Her voice never rose, but every word cut through the room like glass. That attitude ends today. The other employees shifted uneasily. One of them, a young server named Mia, finally spoke up. He does that all the time, she whispered. To anyone he thinks doesn't fit in. Ava nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. Then she turned to Rick. You're relieved of your duties. Effective immediately. The words hit him like a slap. He sputtered, trying to protest, but no one backed him up. For the first time, his authority meant nothing. He looked around, but every pair of eyes in that diner, every person he'd belittled or intimidated, was fixed on Ava, not him. She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. Instead, she handed him his final paycheck, already printed and signed. You can leave with your dignity, Rick. I suggest you use it to learn something. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the bell above it rang for nearly a minute. When the sound finally faded, Ava turned to the staff. This place will be different now, she said quietly. From today, everyone, customer and worker, will be treated with respect. For the first time in years, the diner felt alive again. That evening, long after the lunch rush faded and the last plates were cleaned, Ava stood by the front window of the Maple Leaf Diner, watching the sunset spill golden light across the tables. The same place that once reeked of arrogance now hummed with quiet warmth. The staff moved differently, lighter, freer, as if a heavy shadow had finally lifted. The next morning, Ava gathered the team before opening. She didn't talk about profits or numbers. She talked about people, about her grandmother, who had once cooked here for almost no pay, yet treated every customer like family. She talked about dignity, kindness, and why no one, should ever feel small for who they are or how they look. One by one, the staff nodded. Even Mia, the young waitress who'd spoken up, wiped away a tear. Ava wasn't just their boss, she was their leader. Word spread fast across town. Locals who had stopped coming because of the restaurant's reputation began to return. The elderly man who'd been ignored came back for his favorite soup. The mother of two who'd once waited endlessly for her food smiled as Ava herself brought her breakfast. The diner slowly regained its heart, not through fancy decor or promotions, but through respect. A few weeks later, a local newspaper ran a story titled, "Black Woman Restores Hope in Small-Town Diner." They praised her leadership, but Ava didn't care about recognition. For her, justice wasn't about revenge, it was about redemption. As she stood by the counter one evening, refilling a customer's coffee, Ava thought back to that humiliating moment when coins scattered at her feet. It no longer hurt. It had become a lesson, proof that grace is more powerful than hate and humility stronger than pride. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't payback. It's showing the world how kindness and courage can rebuild what prejudice tries to destroy. And as the bell above the diner's door rang softly again, Ava smiled, knowing that her grandmother's spirit and her own dignity had finally come full circle.